that had been beaten down 12 years by her husband. I'd been abused by him physically and financially. I never had a job. But most of all, I was emotionally belittled for those 12 years, systematically broken down every single day, until I believed that I could never make it on my own, that no one would love me, and that he was the only man that I could ever be with. I thought I'd have a podium. All of those years ago, somehow I got the courage up to call a crisis line. I was told that there was room for me and there was room for me and my 4 children. I cleaned the house, I waited for the kids to come home from school, I called a taxi, and I left to start my new life with $100 in my pocket. I ended up in a shelter in Riverside, where I met Darlene, another young mother with 3 children. We were in the same situation, and we became fast and furious friends. We had a kinship. We knew what each other had been through. We decided that we would get a house together with those 7 kids, and that we would take turns watching them and working, and that we would make it. Then the shelter received a call, the shelter in Riverside received a call that my husband has found my children, and luckily the safe house got to the school before my husband did and pulled the kids out of school, and it just wasn't safe for us to be there any longer. So at that time, there's a book of all the shelters in the United States, and we sat down and we kind of figured out where we'd like to go, and Monterey sounded like a great place. So we called the safe house there, and we got on a Greyhound bus the next day with our 7 kids, 2 black garbage bags full of clothes, and we came up here to start our new life. When arriving at the YWCA safe house, the thing that sticks in my mind most of all today is that it was a house. It was full of peace, and it was truly a safe house. I had my own room with my children, and Darlene had her own room with hers. There was a cute playroom for the kids, and there were 3 other bedrooms for other women. The staff was wonderful, and they made us immediately feel at ease. We had group counseling 5 nights a week where we learned about the cycle of domestic violence, the effect domestic violence had on our children, and the resources in the local community that could help us. While we were in the safe house, there were many volunteers that helped. They drove us to look at rental properties. They took our children on outings, and at times they just came in and read a book, which gave us time to have respite on our own. At the time that I was in the safe house, the program was only 5 weeks long, and I'm happy to say that today it's 8 weeks long because 5 weeks goes by really quick. But 4 weeks into our stay, after finding a house that would take 2 battered women and 7 children, Darlene told me that she needed to go home and that her mom was sick and that she'd be back at the end of the weekend. And I'm sure all of you know where this is going, but I didn't. She never came back. I had 1 week left, and I was really afraid. I didn't know how I was going to do it on my own. The staff didn't let me think that way. They were my cheerleaders. They wanted to make sure that I made it to the end zone, and they urged me there, and I'm happy to say that I made it. I wrote a script and I made a bargain with God, which I don't think is probably a good idea, but I basically just said, you know, if I can't get a place, then I guess you want me to go back. And I wrote up a script and I just said, before I waste your time or mine, I have 4 children, I'm on welfare, you can't call any of my references, and I was lucky enough to find somebody, the first call, that took me and my children and gave us a chance. We found our little apartment in Seaside, and armed with our blankets, dishes, and silverware from the safe house garage. By the way, it's like a store. There's clothes and anything that you could need if you don't have anything. I was just going to say, it's here, Kathleen. So please always things to see if they need them or if there's any women that have just moved out that may need your items. And those first months when I moved out were really hard. I had 4 kids that finally felt safe enough to let it all out, and boy did they. I can remember riding the bus and thinking to myself, as the children were beating the hell out of each other, and people looking at me like, could you take care of your hooligans? That it was okay, I was going to do it. There were days when I really didn't think that I was going to be able to. If it wasn't for a voice on the crisis line many times a day, I wouldn't have made it. If it wouldn't have been for the daily counseling sessions that I had in the main office, I wouldn't have made it. And if it wouldn't have been for the staff believing in me, I wouldn't have made it, because every little hurdle I made was theirs too. 6 months after leaving the safe house, I took the 40-hour training and became a volunteer on the crisis line. Not long after that, I was hired as a staff member. I moved on to be the volunteer coordinator, and I had the pleasure of teaching the 40-hour training to wonderful volunteers. I worked at the YWCA for 3 years before I realized it was time for me to move on. I needed to move beyond my domestic violence. So I left the Y and I ended up at the front desk at a real estate office, where I met Nick Glazer, one of the top agents there, and he hired me on as his assistant, and he encouraged me to get my license. I'm happy to say that 11 years ago, I did just that, and now we're business partners. Now there's a part of my story that still breaks my heart. Although I made it across the long, bumpy road, Darlene did not. She did go back to her husband, and for the last 11 years, she's been housed at the California Corrections Facility for Women in Chowchilla with a 25-year sentence to life for killing her husband. Darlene will be eligible for parole in 2018. Her children not only lost their father, but they lost their mother. I know that there's many women like Darlene that have crossed the YWCA's door, and that for some reason they felt they needed to go back. We can only pray for those women and hope that they find strength inside to overcome it before it's too late. I will always be grateful to the YWCA for helping change my life and the lives of my children. Remember, I am one of the unseen faces of this organization. I'm one of the women that has been helped and has overcome domestic violence. I am one of the many thousands of faces of the YWCA of Monterey County.
Responsible for all this, perhaps the primary person responsible for all this, is Congressman Sam Farr. He could not be with us tonight. There happens to be some budget problems in Washington, D.C. You may have heard of them. But Nancy DeSerpa from his office is here. Nancy?
I can't express how sad Sam is to be in Washington. He'd much rather be here. And quite frankly, I'd much rather have him here. However, the YWCA is so important to Sam. He fought hard. One of his last earmarks has come to this organization because the earmark was so well prepared. It explained the growth of this organization and what was needed in this community to protect our citizens. Sam worked, and the staff in DC, my colleagues, worked so hard, and he is so appreciative to his colleagues who recognized the importance of funding this organization. I remember as a child, I used to go to the Y in Portland, Oregon, and that was my community. That's where I learned to scuba dive, tap dance, just a myriad, summer camps, so many things. Who would have thought that I would be here today speaking for the Congressman for all the other wonderful things that the YWCA provides to this community. It's so unfortunate that we have the need for expansion for victims of domestic violence, but thank God we do have an organization to support our community. So on Sam's behalf, it is my honor to thank you and to sign up as a volunteer.
Is Diane Gonzalez still here? Did she get? Diane Gonzalez was representing Louis Alejo, who also could not be here tonight. And she had some, here she is. Good. Diane Gonzalez for Louis Alejo.
My name is Linda Gonzalez, here on behalf of Assembly Member Luis Alejo. I wanted to present the certificate of recognition congratulating the YWCA on their grand opening. And from Assembly Member Luis Alejo, he wants you to know that he is pleased to know that the YWCA has now brought their services to Salinas. And like Nancy did say, unfortunately, we need to expand, but we are glad that you are providing services to much needed people in our area. Thank you so much.
Too many names. I just apologize to Linda for calling her Diane. Wendy?
We also want to thank the people who made this evening happen. Besides our staff, we had some wonderfully generous donations. And they are printed in your program. For the record, I work for a law school. For the record, I'd like to say them. Of course, Congressman Sam Farr and Mr. Jim Gaddis, who is here tonight. He was very generous. Dan Baldwin is here with the Community Foundation of Monterey. The Hardin Foundation also helped us a great deal. Rancho Cielo. Judge Price is Judge Phillips is here. Judge Phillips. All right. The wine that you have been drinking was donated from Han Winery in Soledad. And our hors d'oeuvres have been through Whole Foods and Safeway Corporation. And Cinderella Carpets donated the 2 carpets so that our reception area is warmer.
Thank you all for supporting us. Please help yourself to the food, the wine, and the balloons, the brochures.